Now I've ridden and reviewed a lot of bikes. That's why I headed down to my favorite motorcycle place, Wow Motorcycles in Marietta, Georgia, to check out one of their very excellent bikes from one of their massive inventories. They have well over 600 motorcycles on hand at all times, and they allow me to pick and choose from their inventory to review. In today's video, I wanted to review something and talk about a bike brand that I don't see very often. And today I'll go into the history and kind of figure out why that bike isn't seen very often, yet has such a popular name and brand behind it. But before we can do that, I do have a word from today's sponsor.
Hey you! Yeah, you, the guy who's balding. Are you tired of people making fun of your ridiculously shiny head? Are you tired of worrying about your hair loss? When am I gonna go completely bald, you probably say to yourself. Boy, do I have something for you. Keeps! Keeps, moron! Keeps! K-E-E-P-S. As in keeping your hair. Let me be honest with you. 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35. That sucks. The good news? With today's advancements in science, Keeps offers proven treatments that can combat the symptoms of hair loss. Keeps has revolutionized the way men are treated for hair loss. You used to have to go to the doctor's office for your hair loss prescriptions. But now, thanks to Keeps, you can visit a doctor online and get medication delivered to your home. No more waiting rooms and no more pharmacy checkout lines. Get doctor-level attention and discreet delivery, all from the comfort and privacy of your own home. But here's the thing, prevention is key. Keeps treatments really work. They're up to 90% effective at reducing and stopping further hair loss. And the sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you'll save. So you gotta act fast. And many men even experience hair regrowth with Keeps treatment. But you should never take my word for anything. Find out for yourself why Keeps has more 5-star reviews than any of its competitors, and why over 100,000 men trust Keeps for his hair loss prevention medication. It starts at just $10 a month, and for a limited time, you can get it for 50% off. It's $5. So if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/doitwithdan. KEEPS.com/doitwithdan.
And you'll get 50% off your first order.
Anyway, now that you can save all your hair, it's time that we get back to doing whatever we were doing.
There is one motorcycle brand that never seems to come to mind when someone asks my opinion on good motorcycles. Come to think of it, I can't remember a single time that someone has suggested this bike to me personally. And honestly, I don't know of anyone who even owns or rides one. I'm talking about Indian motorcycles. So why is it that I never hear or see anything about these bikes, but they're so well known? I'll come back to that. But first, here's what we'll be riding today. This is a 2016 Indian Scout. Wow has let me borrow it and give my honest opinion on it. The Indian Scout is a fuel-injected, water-cooled 1131cc V-twin. That's 69 cc's. Alright. Makes 100 horsepower and 72 foot-pounds of torque. Weighs just under 560 pounds and blah blah blah. Circling back now, the weird thing about Indian motorcycles is that I know about them. But like, in the same sense I know about any other country besides America. I'm aware of them, but I don't really know anything about them. So let's take a quick history lesson. I promise this will be fast. In 1897, the Hendy Manufacturing Company was founded by a dude named George Hendy to produce bicycles. Just a year later, he adopted the name American Indian for the brand, which he decided was too long and then shortened to just Indian for exportation reasons. Apparently, it made the brand easier to recognize overseas. In the year 1900, his bro, Oscar Hedstrom, joined the team, which is totally cool because they were both former bicycle producers / racers. And they were probably tired of pedaling because together they built a few motorcycle prototypes and they were a success. The first Indian motorcycle sold in 1902, and in 1903, Oscar Hedstrom set the motorcycle land speed record for motorcycles at 56 miles an hour. By 1913, they were slinging 32,000 motorcycles a year. Incidentally, this would be the peak of their motorcycle sales forever. A company by the name the Aurora firm was producing the engines for Indian under license agreements until 1907, when Aurora began producing their own motorcycles under the name Thor. Thor didn't make it. At least not as a motorcycle company. They eventually stopped producing motorcycles in 1916 and focused on house appliances. Neat. Indian crushed it for the next few years. They were winning races, producing faster V-twin engines, and setting speed records. A racer by the name De Rotisserie Chicken was said to have won over 900 races on both dirt and track on an Indian. Growth was exploding. And then World War I happened. Indian sold almost solely to the US government for the war. This starved the domestic market and resulted in them losing dealers, which unfortunately they would never fully recover from. After World War I, go America, other manufacturers had taken over the domestic market, and Indian lost its #1 spot to a company called Harley-Davidson. Ever heard of them? The 20s boom happened and Indian worked hard to make deals and partners. They were determined to get their #1 spot back. And by 1940, Indian had sold almost as many bikes as its major rival, Harley-Davidson. They were producing a few models, the Scout and the Chief being the bread and butter. And while the Chief was revered as the Indian's main model, the Scout was gaining popularity fast and even rivaled the Chief. Things were looking up, then boom, World War II happened. Now obviously Indian was all like, pick me when the military contracts came out. However, despite having submitted over 1,000 experimental motorcycle designs, the military decided that the Jeep was a better fit for their fight. Go figure. After the war, Indian motorcycles took a turn for the worst. Ralph Rogers bought a controlling interest in the company, and then things got weird. They stopped production of the Scout and eventually the Chief as well. They focused on lightweight motorcycles like the Arrow and the Super Scout. And while under this direction in 1950, the Indian headlight fender was introduced. And while a lot of people now look at the Indian fender light as a really cool piece of history, in 1953, the company shut down all production. It was dead. And for the next 46 years, the name and brand was passed around. A lot. And for a while, the Indian name was used to distribute other motorcycles here in America. They even shared the exact same models with Royal Enfield. And then again, in 1977, after several handoffs, rebrands, and licensing issues, Indian Motorcycles was bankrupt. It had died for a second time. And then again in 2003. And then, in 2006, a newly formed Indian motorcycle company, mostly owned by a firm in London, was formed. And they planted their flag in North Carolina, baby! Woohoo! Back to America! Freedom! Production was limited heavily. They rebranded the motorcycle as a rare and focused on exclusivity rather than performance. And it worked! In 2011, Polaris, yes, that Polaris, bought Indian motorcycles and molded the Indians that we see today. Yeah, that's right. Polaris owns Indian. And Victory motorcycles, by the way. Just throwing that out there. And boom, we're full circle. Now let's talk about the bike. What was the question? Oh yeah, what's the deal with Indian motorcycles? I've never heard anyone say anything bad about them. Matter of fact, most people tend to say that they love them. So why are they so far and few between? Why don't they get recommended more? Now, depending on how long you've been around on the channel, you might remember that I rented one in Vegas and rode it around for about a week. Actually, it's pretty much the same bike. Same year, same color, same everything. You know, minus this weird leathery foam sack. And I loved it. It was fast and fun. In my group, everyone was on Harleys, and they couldn't keep up with my little Indian bicycle. I could not have chose a better bike to ride around Las Vegas. The experience was amazing, and I'll never forget it. But it was like as soon as I got off the bike, I forgot about the bike. Just gone from my memory. Now, does that mean it was a bad bike? No. Hell no. That bike is a pleasure to ride all around. It's fast, it's comfortable, it's convenient, and it looks stunning. I think it's just forgettable. Let's talk about how the bike rides. The first thing I noticed was how stiff the suspension is. Every bump was very noticeable. I'd compare it to a sport bike suspension, but it honestly felt more harsh than that. I think it was more noticeable due to the seating position. Now, the seating position and the handlebars are extremely comfortable, but you sit more of on the bike rather than in the bike. You know, not quite as bad as a Harley Sportster, but it's still a pretty high seat. And honestly, I think a new seat and a little bit softer suspension, and this thing would be an 11 out of 10. You know, it's got a lot of power for a cruiser. I feel like the designer couldn't really decide between a cruiser styling bike or a muscle bike. So they gave it like the cruiser feel with the power and handling of a muscle bike. I don't know. But let's switch gears and go to the handling. This bike eats. It has an excellent lean angle, stable steering, and it carries its weight very well. Now, the rear brakes are a little on the sensitive side, but the front brakes are very strong and confident. Downshifting is easy and clean without the use of a clutch, and it doesn't cause the bike to pull or buck. And the engine provides a lot of braking power when slowing down. One thing I couldn't really shake though was the engine's sound. It was totally contradicting the way the bike is supposed to feel. I feel like I'm supposed to look at this bike and feel its heritage in my palm when I twist the throttle, but it feels synthetic. The pops from the exhaust feel programmed. The style feels stolen. And I think that's because it is. I love the styling and the feel that this bike has. It's an excellent bike, but it's not authentic. There isn't any ties to its original platform other than its name, and some would argue even that. No history went into this bike. This bike was developed specifically around an image, for nostalgia. Now let me let it be known that this is how I felt before I did my research. It was only after I learned about its history that it made sense. Its true colors did seep through. It's so detached from its roots it doesn't feel like a bike built from experience. It feels manufactured. Like the bike was just built as a good bike rather than earning and becoming a good bike. It was just designed that way. At first glance, it definitely looks like an old motorcycle's styling. The tan leather and the beefy tires, saddlebags and the draped handlebars. But when you look closely at the engine's presentation, it's very clear to me that this is Polaris's styling. It's too clean. It all looks covered up like a Cadillac's engine bay. Like, look here, but don't look here. You don't worry about this engine. You just worry about riding and having fun. Don't worry. I'm gonna hold your hand through this entire motorcycle thing, like a very kited experience. And I think that's where the separation is from. The name Indian Motorcycles has been around since the beginning of the motorcycle industry, but it doesn't share the same lineage. You're supposed to remember the Indian name and go, oh yeah, I know that bike. Like, that's the draw. And then it surprises you by actually being a good bike. It feels good, it rides good, it has excellent reliability, from what I've been told. I feel like if the Scout was sold under a different name, like Kawasaki or Honda, I would be able to fully appreciate it. It has that Japanese cruiser feel and style, despite being an American motorcycle. People are probably gonna criticize me for this, and I hate to say it, I think I'd much rather have the Harley-like experience. I feel like this bike should pop and shake. I should be convulsing like Michael J. Fox at a stoplight on a 1200cc Sportster. Not the good ones either, I mean the 1200 kit, with no tuning and no counterbalanced engines. But I'm not. I'm greeted with a comfortable and carefree and well-endowed motorcycle ride. And that is bullshit. I think you understand the point I'm trying to make here. I probably wouldn't focus on this so much if they didn't try so hard to pull at strings that aren't there. Like a Harley, this bike is covered in its own branding. The clutch levers, mirrors, accessories, engine covers, and it goes on. And it is done a little bit more classy than your average Harley, where you can't even look at a tire without seeing the Harley shield. But at least Harley's done a good job at sticking to their roots. Let's take a step back and recap this bike. Is there anything about this bike that makes it bad? No. Nothing. Overall, this bike is excellent. It's got the perfect power band and carries plenty of torque. There's not a flat stop in this bike's rev range. At any moment in time, you can roll on the throttle and be more than happy. The riding position is prime as well. You can hop on this bike and ride for hours unscathed. The handlebars are draped perfectly to fit your seat, while being stretched out comfortably for both tall and short people. Not many bikes can cover both. Leaning into turns inspires a sport bike-like confidence. I mean, you're not gonna take this bad boy to the track or drag near anything like that, but you would be very hard-pressed to find yourself in a situation you couldn't throttle out. And all of this is packaged nicely into a ruby sparkle red Indian Scout body. It's an incredibly sharp-looking bike. Obviously, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but hot damn does this bike look good. Even those who are die-hard Harley or crotch rocket butt boys stand back and say, man, now that is a good-looking bike. Actually, come to think of it, it's just a good damn bike. And there's not a single person I wouldn't recommend this bike to, if I can remember it.